Hello friends, welcome back to GM Philosophy in the Morning. I'm the GM Philosopher. Today we're talking about mistakes made while playing D&D. Did you know that mistakes can actually turn into some of your most epic moments? They don't have to be flub ups, they don't have to ruin anything. They could transition from mistake territory into truly epic territory that actually makes your games better. I'm going to teach you exactly how to do it in this video. You're not going to miss it. Stay tuned, let's dive in. Mistakes happen. Sometimes they're relatively easy to correct, but sometimes they can lead to what seem like bigger problems. And the question bears asking, is this going to derail my session? Is this going to derail the adventure? Do I have to let this ruin things? Or can I use this to make the session even better? A better experience for the players, a more creative thing for the story overall? This is a really important question, and the answer is most of the time, mistakes do not have to ruin anything. They can act as transition moments to even more epic moments in your story. There's only one question that bears asking: how do you do it? And that's exactly what I'm going to teach you in this video. Here at GM Philosophy, we have one goal: to empower game masters to run better games. If you're a game master and you're interested in making your games even more amazing, smash that thumbs up button and hit the subscribe button. I also have an ebook I'd like to give you. This ebook is titled Mastering the Game: 10 Essential GM Tips How to Take Them to the Next Level. These are my top 10 most important tips for game masters who literally want to level up their games tonight. If you download this ebook by joining my email list, there'll be a download link in that first email. You can read it. It's only 7 pages long. Digest it. Incorporate these tips into your next game. Boom. It will be awesome. All right, friends, it's time to talk about making mistakes and then how you can turn mistakes into epic moments. Now, I like to think of mistakes as being in two different categories. On one hand, there are mistakes that don't really matter that much. They don't have far-reaching implications for immersion. We're going to call these minor mistakes. And then there are major mistakes, significant mistakes, mistakes that actually do have some far-reaching implications. In my mind, you want to handle these two different types of mistakes very differently, and we're going to talk about both in this video. So minor mistakes is really the first type of mistake. These are things like you had a player who forgot to add their modifier in the last roll, or a player lets you know, oh man, I wasn't supposed to add my proficiency, but I did, and that was the game-changing thing that got them over the armor class. You've already done damage, you've already moved on past it. Maybe rules is written, they weren't supposed to get that hit, but they did roll good enough with the mistake that they were able to get the hit, right? To me, this is a minor mistake. This is an example of a minor mistake. How do you turn this into an epic moment? How do you handle this mistake without letting it be a problem? I never usually go back and retcon minor mistakes. I always just sort of I just phase over them. I gloss over them. It's sort of like if you were putting down plaster and you recognize there's a little mistake, like a little crack in the plaster. You just I just plaster right over it. I don't really care that much. If a player says to me, oh, GM, last turn, I know that you said, for us to roll a charisma modifier, but I accidentally rolled a wisdom modifier. That's the modifier I told you. I would have failed if it would have been a charisma modifier. See, to me, this is a minor mistake. And here's what I do. I'll say something like, it turns out that your character was just especially well tuned in. Even though, like you said, you rolled a wisdom modifier, your character was able to push through that charisma-based challenge just with sheer might of their wisdom. This is a truly heroic moment for your character. They realize, wow, I really dodged a bullet on that one. So you can kind of just turn this mistake. You don't even, it's more than just even glossing it over. You're literally taking it and you're turning it into something good for the player. So the player might be thinking, oh no, I actually failed it. And it was a legitimate, honest mistake. I'm not talking about players who try to take advantage of you. I'm talking about players who are making legitimate mistakes. I like to gloss over them, make them a little epic for the character, and then we move on. It's not a big deal. I don't make a big deal about it. I don't go back. I don't retcon a bunch of things, right? It happened. We've moved on. Boom, no problem. This is how I handle minor mistakes and try to turn them into little epic moments for the players. Now let's talk about relatively major mistakes. And a lot of time these will be like GM mistakes. So for example, what if I am going through a storyline and I get a major detail wrong. Like, let's just say, for example, that we are playing a game. We left off last episode at 8 in the morning, but when we jump back into the game, I mistakenly say it's 8 p.m. So there's like a 12-hour difference. This can be a big mistake that can have relatively far reaching implications for the setting, for the adventure. And so for these types of situations, I will handle it very common sense. Let's say that I don't notice I've made this mistake until we already are like 1, 2 hours into the session. The players are doing stuff. And suddenly one of the players says, "Hey, wasn't it morning time when we stopped last session?" And I think to myself, and I consult my notes and I realize, oh gosh, yes, I was 12 hours off. I read it 8 p.m., not 8 a.m. What do you do about this kind of mistake? This is a relatively major mistake. So what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to think, okay, what can we do to avoid needing to retcon a bunch of stuff? We've already been role playing for 1, 2 hours. We're not going to retcon all that. Instead, I'm going to just be above table with players. I'm going to say, okay, listen, players, listen, so-and-so is right. I accidentally started us 12 hours later than we were supposed to be. So let's go through and do a quick recap. What would you players, just we'll speed through it. What would you all have liked to have done for the 12 hours before then? And let's make it like, just for the sake of storyline, let's all work together. Try to make it sort of like not super storyline intensive stuff, like maybe shopping, maybe crafting stuff. Maybe you went and did a little investigating, maybe, blah, blah, blah. Let the players be creative. Let them jump up and say, oh, I wanted to go do this, blah, blah, blah. And then you give them some good stuff for it. Maybe they craft. You let them craft their thing faster than they would normally have been able to. Maybe they went shopping. Maybe they found some great deals on some items. They got discounts. Maybe they went investigating. You give them some clues that will literally fit into the stuff you're role playing through right now. Give players the opportunity to see that mistake that you made as something that benefited them, helped them, made them more excited about the story, made them more excited about the adventure. This is going to turn a mistake into a relatively fun, epic moment. It's going to present a positive cycle type thing. And if one of the players would have suffered a downturn because of this, like let's say, for example, that you told your players last session, you have a potion brewing and it will be done by noon, but it's very important that you remove it from the heat. Otherwise it can explode, right? So let's just say, for example, that in this session, they've been like babysitting the potion, but it turns out they didn't have to be doing that because it would have been removed at noon earlier, right? How do you retcon this kind of thing? Because now the player's already lost out on time, role-playing time they would have had if you wouldn't have made the mistake. Here's what I would do in that situation. I would, again, follow that rule. How can I make this awesome, epic, fun, a benefit for the player? How can I make this so that it's even more exciting? Here's what I'm going to tell the player. I'm going to tell the player, okay, listen, above table, I realize that because of my mistake, you have been watching your potion instead of interacting with the other players doing this and that. As a reward for your devotion to that storyline, and in light of the fact that I messed up the timing, we're going to give you a bonus for this. Because of all the extra work you've obviously put into your potion during this time, I'm going to give you a couple different options. Maybe we're going to say your potion either is doubled in potency. That's one. You've doubled the amount you've made. So instead of 1, you've made 2. Or maybe it was done earlier and now you've been working on upgrading it to another step. If so, what do you see as being like the upgrade you're adding to it now, which we're just about done with? And then you would have the upgrade. And then you work with the player to like basically describe how they would have wanted to enhance it. Maybe they say, I wanted to do more of this, or I would also like it to do this. If you can find a thing that will excite them about it, and get them to think, oh yeah, that'd be worth it. Boom, you have found the direction you want to go in. This turns, once again, what could have been a feel-bad mistake into a moment of like, oh yeah, this turned out even better than I was expecting for the player. And that's what we want. We want to turn those mistakes into epic moments. Now, let's say that you're making mistakes in role play. Let's say that you're role playing an NPC. I had this happen one time. One time I had an NPC who talked and acted a certain kind of way. And I went like several levels, many sessions, like 12 sessions role playing this NPC a certain way. But then for some reason, and I can't even tell you why because I'm not aware of it, During the next session, I role played them with a slightly different voice and a slightly different mannerism. I actually don't know why I did this. To be really honest, I wasn't even thinking about it and I didn't even notice it that much. But all of the players, they all kind of stopped and said, wait, 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 wait. Is Leary really talking like that? Why is he acting so different? And then another player was like, yeah, I was wondering that. Is that like normal? Are you meaning to role play him different? Or is that something we're like supposed to notice? Like, I think the reason I was role playing him differently was because I just wasn't putting quite as much thought into him. I was role playing him, but I was kind of thinking about one of the other NPCs. Actually, honestly, I think is what was going on. And it just made my delivery of him kind of strange. Now, I could have said, no, I'm not meaning him to be strange. He just kind of sounds like that. It's like, oh, okay. But to me, this was a missed opportunity. So when they said this to me, I thought to myself, this is very interesting. What if there's something going on with Leary that I am not even aware of, right? What if the players have picked up on something that I want to follow? I roll my dice. I think to myself, if I roll high, then there's something really good going on. If I roll really low, there's something bad going on. I rolled low. And then I said, you know what? Now that you mention it, roll me an insight check. And I had them roll insight. And then the ones who made a really good result, I said, you know what? You do notice that Leary is acting a little strange right now. You notice he's been acting strange ever since. And basically, I talked about where the last session let off. And I said, and here's what you think might be happening. And then I give them like basically a little theory. So like I think I said something like, you notice that he's just been a little more withdrawn. Ever since so and so happened, he hasn't really been as outspoken as usual. He's been kind of like looking like more inflective. He's been like staring at the ground. His words have been kind of trailing off. He seemed less engaged lately. So I played into their calling out the differences as a storyline arc for that NPC. And then a lot of them actually pursued it. They wanted to know what the heck was wrong with Leary. And so this was a fun situation. And because I kind of like wasn't role playing the NPC like I had been, this is inconsistency, right? This can hurt immersion. But the player characters, when they called it out, I thought to myself, you know, I want to turn this into a story. How can I turn this into an epic storyline moment that the players could choose to pursue? And then that's what I did. And it turned it into a fun sort of like whole arc where several of the other player characters ended up talking to him. There were some very meaningful conversations about stuff the party was going through, stuff he was going through. And it led to a lot of really in-depth role play that would have never happened if I would have just shrugged it off and said, oh no, there's nothing there. Right. So that's just another example of how you can take like a mistake, but turn it into an epic moment. Now, obviously, there could be all kinds of different types of mistakes you can make. And I don't have time to go over every possible mistake in this video. We would be here for only like, I think, 14 hours. But the point is this. Every time you detect that something could have been a mistake, you want to think to yourself, is this a minor mistake? If it is, gloss over it. Doesn't matter. We're not going back to retcon it. If anything, give the player a benefit. Give them an inspiration. Give them an advantage on their next roll. Make up for it. If it costs the player something, make up for it. If the player gains something, write it off as being like your character was just more exceptional than usual at that point. It's fine. Let's move on. Right? So you want to end it on a player feel-good note on the minor ones. On the major mess ups, lean into them. Turn them into a story arc. Turn them into an epic moment, turn them into something unexpected that will excite the players, make the players think, oh, this is kind of awesome, right? Make the players think, oh, wow, I love this. Like, this is really interesting. You can get really creative with this too. You could even get so creative with this that if you miss entire swaths of the story or something, you could even explain it with things like time dilation or reality fracturing. Maybe you missed an entire plot arc and you think to yourself, like you get halfway through a session and then one of the players is like, whoa, wait a minute. Are we just going to not talk about how we had Mr. Robinson tied up in the next room last session? Because this session, he hasn't even been mentioned. And you think to yourself, oh my God, I forgot all about Mr. Robinson. That was a whole point of the last session. And then you think to yourself, how can I change this? And then you say to yourself, or this is what you say to the player. You might say, roll me a percentile. And then they roll. And I say, the room flickers. You see almost what looks like static. You hear these sounds, echoes, Mr. Robinson's voice. But sure enough, it comes into your mind and then it goes away again. You do not even really remember him being there, but you kind of remember him being there. There is something weird going on with reality. What would you like to do? Right? So you're kind of turning it into a new adventure arc. Some of your players might call BS on this, and that's okay. On this level of adjustment, I would play it cool. If players did say, you just forgot about him, I'd be like, is that what you think? Does your character remember Mr. Robinson? You should roll for me. See if they remember him. Right? So I would play that one kind of cool. But you can even go to those lengths where you use time dilation or reality manipulation to kind of fix problems. I would say try to minimize those types of things. You want to be a little careful, kind of like what Rick said to Morty in the Rick and Morty when they jump timelines to a new timeline. He's like, we only have a handful of these left. We got to be careful. We can only do this a handful more times. You can only fix problems with reality manipulation or time dilation a certain number of times before things start to get kind of weird and hokey, but it is a tool that you can use. And sometimes it leads the game in unexpected, fun directions that you never would have anticipated. Now, one more quick thing. I want to give a huge shout out to our Ko-Fi supporters, especially our gold supporters. Our latest gold supporter, Craig. Craig, thank you so much for sponsoring the videos and for helping us to level up GM philosophy, both the Discord and the YouTube and the email list. And to all of our Ko-Fi supporters, I want to give a huge thank you and shout out. If you'd like to support the channel through the Ko-Fi, link is in the description. We would love to have you join the team and get massive benefits. Unlock a whole bunch of awesome stuff when you become a community supporter. And that, my friends, is going to be a wrap. Thank you so much for coming back for another episode of GM Philosophy in the Morning. I'm here every single day creating videos about the best game in the world, D&D. Roll some D100s for me at your next game. Join us in the GM Philosophy Discord. Link is in the description. And I will see you awesome people on the next one.